play your way into what you want or the life that you want to create or the goal that you're trying to achieve, whatever it is. Like, you can't get there by thinking that there's only like set paths or the right answer or the right thing. You literally have to be willing to completely unravel to become whatever it is that you want to become. So,
you know what that is making me think, because when I think of play, I think explore. You know, I think mistakes. I think no rules, essentially.
Yeah.
And if you're not living your dream life already, then I would assert necessarily you need to play.
Yeah.
Because your current life is not your dream life.
Right.
So how do you expect to live your dream life by just continuing to live your current life? You know, continuing to live by the same rules, not exploring new possibilities, not willing to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And if you kind of constrain yourself into your current life and your current situation, and the only way out of that is to play, is to explore. And so you at least have a chance of achieving your dream life.
Yeah.
But the only way to do that is through play.
Yeah. I see it like, well, how I envision play is almost like a situation where, of course, it's like rainbows and butterflies and like skipping and gumdrops. Yeah. I like picture all of that, but I don't see them, like when you say mistakes and like failing, I almost don't even imagine that. It's not that it's not a part of the picture, but it
has a different meaning.
Yeah. It's like when you're actually playing, like think of when you were a child and you're like actually playing with your toys. There's not even a concept of failure, or like things like not working, because that means when you fail, right, I think it implies that there's something right and there's something wrong.
It reminds me of when I would always paint, and you know, like my paintings were always hideous, but
we'll show up
my rule was that there are no mistakes, just unexpected changes in direction. And that's exactly what it was when you were a kid. It's like there were no mistakes when you were playing. You're just like, oh, this is the new direction, you know what I mean?
Like, oh, we're taking this route today,
and it's fun and exciting, and it's surprising.
There's nothing weird. It's not embarrassing. There's no cringe. Like I was just talking to my sister about this. When we were kids, we would literally, like, the first day we would get our toys, we're like playing with it like normal, right? And then like at some point, I don't know if everyone did this with their siblings, but we would essentially start making characters and shows out of the toys.
Okay.
Like we would, and it was like every day we were showing up to set.
It was like a series.
Yeah, it was a series, and we would come with the toys, and we would like, everybody got into their characters, but the character was the toy, and we would continue. It was almost like improv. We were like making a show with these toys. And that's like the epitome of like, there's no mistakes. Like we were, if a character was having a meltdown today, like my brother was playing with a toy and that one was just like, I hate everyone, I'm killing everyone. Like we just went with the plot. And I think that it's so, like, obviously it's a smaller, funnier example, but I think that is something that we just lose more and more of as we grow up. And I think, ironically, when everyone thinks of success and they think of making it, they think of like, oh, you got to get more serious. You got to get more strict. You got to get more like raw. You got to grind, you know? And I think it's actually the opposite. I say this all the time, but like when you look at these people who are really successful or have a lot of money or like whatever, when you actually watch interviews of them, which I highly encourage people, if you want to be like someone, watch interviews of people like that or try to get around them so you can understand how they think. But when you watch interviews of these people, you're like, wow, they're very like childish in nature. Like they're very like dreamy and kind of like woo-woo-y. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's not what I expected.
Pranksters.
They're merry pranksters. They are merry pranksters. Like, I don't know if I should explain that, but just look up Jeremy Strong. That's all I need to say. Think of like, I don't know, like Oprah or like Elon Musk or like sometimes even Jeff Bezos. Like when I watch him, he's very like, when he's talking about things that he enjoys, it seems like he's very like giddy. And I think even though we all have like this idea of like this like finance bro and everything, like I feel like the people who are actually living the dream, they channel in that childish energy. Yeah. Like they do often.
And like a couple examples, like not from modern times, like Albert Einstein and Richard Feynman, two very prominent physicists, they're kind of known for their pranks and like always just joking around. And you know, those people had some of the most important ideas of the 21st century.
Yeah.
And kind of progressed all of human civilization in a lot of like, you know, important ways. So it's like
coincidence.
And the way they were doing it is they were willing to play. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or not just willing, they like actively played, and that was like their thing.
Yeah, it kind of makes me sad, like thinking about how young people, like I'm not even talking about like you have like you're in your 30s and your 40s and you have kids in a house. I'm talking about like younger people are so like they're not playing. That like makes me sad, like because if anything in your 20s, like this is the time to play. And I'm not saying play, I mean, look, there's no mistakes. So like if your play is like getting drunk every weekend, like sure, that's an option, right? Like not necessarily one that I want to partake in, but that is a version of play. Like, but if you want to just backpack around Europe or like host families in different places, learn different like languages, programs. Like things like that. Like when did like I feel like that was when I was a kid and I was watching movies of people who were in their 20s, like that's the stuff that they were doing. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm now like in my 20s, like I do not see that. Like I feel like people around me are living like they're like 50. We all have jobs, we're all like you know, just staying in, doing nothing. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's actually a lot more fun, but it's like that's all we're doing. We're not making a lot of mistakes. Like everybody wants to stay so in line, like they don't want to fail. There's like so much embarrassment, there's so much cringe, like and that's honestly why I feel like we have so many like micro celebrities and like influencers, because those are the people who are just playing and documenting it for everybody to see,
and then people are vicariously playing
through them, and they're not actually playing in their own life. And it's like, what would you do? I'm actually kind of interested, like what would most people be like if they didn't have these like influencers to like play through? Like if they had to, instead of watching somebody buy a bunch of different makeup shades and try it on, like maybe you would have to do that, because you'd be like, you know what, no one's watching, I don't care, like what's gonna happen? And I think that's why David Dobrik and, you know, Logan Paul, these people are so entertaining, because they're just like, oh, I cracked the code. Like all I have to do is just keep doing whatever the fuck I want to do and document it in a fun, entertaining way. Mr. Beast, like, you know, and then people are going to watch, and they're not doing it. They're not going to do it. And it's like, that's sad. I feel like not that you have to be doing what they're doing, but everybody should have their own version of their play. And like, I don't understand why that's not normal anymore. And maybe it's us, we live in this space where people, I don't know, I'm confused.
The first thing that comes to my mind is just we have a need for predictability, especially as we get older. You know, I feel like as people get older, we just accumulate trauma. And then, you know, we kind of burn our hand on the stove like several times and in every facet of life. So we just become more conservative as we get older. And then with being more conservative, we want things to be more predictable. And exploring and playing like necessarily requires lack of predictability, because you don't know what's, you know, behind the door. You don't know what's in the forest. You know what I mean? That's why you're exploring it, you know, by definition. And that's why I feel it's so easy for kids, because everything's new, everything's novel. And then as you get older, you kind of, you know, you've learned a lot of hard lessons, and you don't want to suffer because that's uncomfortable. So I feel like all these things are so interconnected, like playing, exploring, being uncomfortable, being okay with unpredictability, being okay with uncertainty, being okay to just unexpectedly change direction if it makes sense. You know what I mean?
And it's kind of interesting that you say that, because the lack of predictability, I think, or you were saying predictability or lack of?
We crave predictability.
Oh, we crave predictability. Yes, I think that's interesting that you say that, because I feel like we're getting so much of predictability through social media and like through the internet that people don't have to do it, like they don't have to,
it's like a safe anything. Way to explore.
Like they can explore online, and they don't have to do that in their own life. Like if we didn't see what it looked like for people to do exactly what we want to do, we would have to do it. Like we would have to just explore. The curiosity would just be burning in us so much that we'd have to do it. And I think honestly that's kind of funny, because I think that's why you and I have this like deep drive to do what we're doing, because we don't see an example like exactly the way we want it.
I mean, that's the whole story behind the data entrepreneurs. I was literally looking for months for a community of like data people that do entrepreneurship, like a community specifically for them, not a community of data people and not a community of entrepreneurs, a community of both those people. And I tried because I didn't want to start the community because it's a lot of work. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a lot of like data people are pretty introverted typically. Yeah. It's like and you know, I was working full time and I was making content and it's like, I don't have extra time. But I think at a certain point, I was like, this is important. And I just made it. I made time. I made it a priority. And I think people are getting value out of it. So I think it's worth it.
Yeah. If you're an entrepreneur and you're into data, check it out. We'll leave it in the description. I think we need that though. We need to crave it and we need to not see it. That's what makes life interesting. Like that's what I feel like that's what gives us purpose. You know, like when you're matching like your strengths, your abilities with your desires and things that you don't see, like you get this beautiful creation of like what you're meant to do here on earth. And it's like, I think that's what's causing a lot of like mental illness, you know, like because we are just too idle and we're just we're not living our lives. I think when we're not living our own true lives, we just become a shell of a person.